What if the moment you finally win does not look like victory at all? What if there is no big apology, no breakdown, no last message that proves you were right the whole time? What if the real sign you beat them is something colder, stranger, and much harder to understand at first? Silence. Not a pause. Not a trick. Not a little game to make you chase. Real silence. The kind that lands so hard it almost feels louder than all the chaos that came before it. And if you have lived inside confusion, guilt, long arguments, fake tears, and sudden emotional storms, that silence can feel unreal. It can even make you nervous, because part of you is still waiting, still bracing, still expecting the next attack. But stay with me, because what looks empty on the surface can actually be the clearest proof that the game is over, and once you see the signs, you will never hear that silence the same way again. Watch closely, because the last sign is the one almost nobody expects, and when it happens, it changes everything. When you truly defeat a narcissist, the breakthrough usually does not come with one giant explosive fight, a movie-style ending, or some satisfying confession where they finally admit what they did. The clearest sign of your victory is often much more unsettling. It is total silence. For someone who spent months or years trapped in emotional chaos, that sudden drop from non-stop tension to nothing can feel deeply unnatural. You get so used to long texts, mood swings, pressure, and emotional traps that when everything suddenly goes still, your mind does not know what to do with it. But this is not just quiet, it is the end of their access. It is the point where they realize the old weapons no longer work, and the shock of that sends them into retreat. To understand why this silence matters so much, you have to understand what it is not. It is not the usual silent treatment they used before. It is not ghosting meant to punish you. It is not a planned disappearance to make you panic and run after them. It is not the short, quiet period during a discard while they test someone new. Those old tactics were all built on one hope, that you would crack and come back. This silence is different. Heavy, still, final. It comes from running out of moves, and once you feel the difference, you cannot unsee it. Think about how they normally react when you try to leave, speak up, or set a real boundary. They do not simply accept it and move on. They push back, hard. First, they may try to pull you in with fake softness. Suddenly they are kind, emotional, full of regret, saying all the things you waited so long to hear. They promise change, they promise therapy, they promise honesty. They use memories, tears, and hope like bait on a hook. If that does not work, the mask can flip fast. Then comes rage, blame, insults, threats, cold cruelty. If even that fails, they may go after your image. They start whispering to friends, family, or co-workers, twisting the story so they can stay in control. An undefeated narcissist always wants engagement. Even a nasty fight still feeds them, because it proves they can still reach inside your mind and shake your emotions. That is why the silence matters so much. Silence means the line has gone dead. No rage, no fake love, no smear. No accidental run-ins. No midnight messages. No bait. Nothing. That blank space is their unspoken admission that they no longer have psychological access to you. The door is not only closed, it is sealed shut. And for the first time, they are standing in front of a wall they cannot climb. For the survivor, that quiet does not always feel peaceful at first. Sometimes it feels eerie. Your body has been trained to expect impact. So even when the danger is gone, your nerves still act like it is near. You may check your phone too often. You may wake up already tense, waiting for drama that never arrives. You may rehearse conversations in your head, prepare defenses, imagine the next attack. Days pass, then weeks, then months, and still nothing. That is when the truth slowly starts to sink in. They are gone because they no longer see a weak point to enter. They only invest energy where they believe there is still guilt, hope, fear, or confusion left to exploit. They throw anger like a weapon because they expect it to shake your confidence. They create chaos because they expect you to defend yourself, over-explain, or emotionally react. The second you jump into that ring, they get what they wanted. But when they meet solid boundaries and complete emotional detachment, the whole setup collapses. You stop feeding them in every direction. No affection, no panic, no pain they can touch, no access to your mind. You become closed off to the game. And when that happens, staying focused on you becomes a loss for them. A dry well, a locked room, a dead end. That is when they finally move away from the fight, not out of respect, but because there is nothing left to take. This silence is not maturity, it is not kindness, it is not them deciding to honor your peace, it is self-protection. Their ego cannot handle repeated failure in front of the person they once believed they could control. In their mind, life is often split into winners and losers, power and weakness, pursuit and capture. So if they keep reaching for you and keep getting nothing back, they are forced to face a truth they cannot bear. They not only lost the argument, lost the hold, lost the role they thought they had in your inner world. To keep chasing you without results would mean admitting that you no longer need them, fear them, or even revolve around them. And that truth burns, so they disappear to protect the image they have of themselves. This retreat can go deeper than people realize. They may stop checking your social media, stop using fake accounts, stop asking mutual people about you, stop staging chance meetings in places you used to go. Why? Because even watching from a distance would prove you still matter to them, and they cannot tolerate that exposure. So instead, they rewrite the story inside their own head. They tell themselves they left because they were bored, above it, or finished with you. That lie becomes their shield, but your job is not to argue with their fantasy. Your job is to recognize the silence for what it really is. Proof, quiet proof. And yes, this part matters, so keep listening. True defeat does not end with retreat. It often triggers a deeper collapse that starts leaking into the rest of their life. Many people assume they just move on smoothly and do the same thing to someone else without missing a step. Sometimes they try, but when you are the person holding the emotional weight for a long time, your exit can expose cracks they were working hard to hide. Empathetic, grounded, resilient people often become an invisible support beam in toxic relationships. You absorb emotional storms, you calm tension, you carry projections, you reflect stability back to someone who may be deeply unstable inside. You become a buffer between their inner chaos and the outside world. So when you finally step away for real, they do not just lose attention, they lose structure. The emotional labor you gave for free is gone, and suddenly the pressure inside them has nowhere to go. That unraveling often shows up in everyday life. Work gets sloppy. They miss details. They become reactive in places where they used to stay polished. Their charm still appears in flashes, but it does not hold. Their timing gets worse. Their decisions get messy. They snap at the wrong people. They overplay their hand. They start making mistakes that confuse everyone around them. The image begins to crack. Not always in one dramatic moment, but in a series of visible slips. And once people start noticing those cracks, it gets harder and harder for them to glue the mask back on. At the same time, their personal relationships often start to burn faster than before. Without the steady emotional cushion you gave, they may rush through new sources of attention at a desperate speed. They need praise, they need emotional reaction, they need someone to carry the anxiety they cannot regulate on their own. But new people do not always have your patience, your depth, or your ability to tolerate confusion for long, so the cycle speeds up. What once took years can now unfold in weeks. The charm fades sooner, the pressure rises faster, public drama increases, new romances become unstable, friendships crack, arguments start showing in places where they used to appear smooth and admired. People who once thought they were magnetic begin to notice something is off. Then the strain starts showing physically too. Someone who once cared deeply about image may begin to look exhausted, neglected, tense, or scattered. Their habits can get reckless, sleep goes bad. Mood swings become easier to see. They may throw themselves into distractions, substances, spending, impulsive choices, or risky behavior just to keep from sitting alone with the emptiness. Friends and family start whispering. Co-workers grow uncomfortable. The room begins to feel their instability even when nobody says it out loud. That is the hard truth many survivors never hear. Sometimes your absence exposes what your presence was quietly holding together. And when that support is gone, the collapse becomes harder to hide. In some cases, the damage becomes so visible that they do not just leave the relationship, they leave the whole environment. They move, they change jobs, they abandon social circles, they vanish from places where people knew them well. This is one of the strongest signs that the defeat cut deep. Under normal conditions, they often protect territory. They like familiar stages, shared circles, known reputations, and places where they can control the story. They may even stay close on purpose just to flaunt a new partner, a new image, or a new success in front of you. It is all part of the performance. But when their mask slips too publicly, when too many people compare stories, when evidence exists, or when the truth settles into the room, staying there becomes unbearable. They cannot stand walking into spaces where others may quietly know what really happened. Their entire identity depends on controlling the narrative. They need the hero role, the misunderstood role, the special role. Once that control breaks, every familiar face can start to feel like a mirror they do not want to look into, so they run. They may call it a fresh start, a new chapter, a bold move. But underneath the shiny words is panic. They are not rising to something better. They are escaping a place where the illusion stopped working. And if you have ever watched that happen, you know how revealing it is. The sudden move is not random. It is often a flight from exposure, shame, and the unbearable pain of being truly seen. When they land somewhere new, the first thing they often rebuild is the story. They need a clean stage and an audience that does not know the past. So they arrive carrying a victim script. They describe themselves as misunderstood, betrayed, unfairly treated, held back by jealous people, or wounded by toxic relationships. Their retreat becomes a brave reinvention. Their chaos becomes a spiritual reset. Their running becomes protecting their peace. Listen carefully to how that works. They do not repair. They relocate. They do not reflect. They rebrand. They do not face the damage. They search for a blank wall where they can paint a better picture over the old one. That is why location changes, social resets, and sudden identity shifts can be so telling. The outside move often hides an inner collapse they do not know how to face. And here is something many survivors find deeply validating. As the collapse grows, the people who once defended them may begin to change. The same friends, family members, or co-workers who once believed every word, dismissed your pain, or treated you like the problem may suddenly come back with a very different tone, not to attack you, to ask questions, to express worry, to say something feels wrong. They might tell you they are not acting like themselves, or things are getting bad, or I do not know what is happening, but they are spiraling. When those messages come, they hit hard, because for so long, nobody listened. And now the truth is leaking out without your help. That shift can feel like justice, but it also carries a trap. When the old enablers finally start to notice, you may feel tempted to explain everything, to lay out the whole history, to say, "Now do you see?" to try to win the understanding you should have had from the start. But be careful, you do not owe anyone a full retelling of your pain just because the fire finally reached their side of the building. Many of these people stayed comfortable when you were carrying the damage alone. They defended the image because it was easier. They looked away because it cost them nothing. And now that the chaos is touching their life, suddenly they want insight, context, help, maybe even rescue. But your healing is not a public service. Their delayed awareness does not create a debt in you. Sometimes your strongest move is to say very little, or nothing at all. Their concern is not the same as accountability. Their confusion does not erase the role they played. And their panic does not mean you have to step back into the storm. In fact, your silence at that point can become one of the most powerful parts of your recovery. It shows that you are no longer available to carry the system, no longer the emotional shield, no longer the translator of someone else's damage. Let them sit with what they now see. Let them feel the weight of what you once survived in silence. That distance is not cruelty, it is closure. And sometimes it is the final proof that you have stepped fully out of the cycle. There is another sign that can confuse almost everyone because it looks like honesty on the surface. In rare and more extreme situations, when the lies stop working and the evidence is too strong to twist, they may suddenly switch strategies and act publicly self-aware. Out of nowhere, they begin speaking in the language of regret. They post emotional messages. They say they lost themselves. They talk about inner darkness, mistakes, healing, change, therapy, rehab, spiritual growth starting over. People around them may be shocked. Some may even say, maybe they finally get it. But do not rush to believe the performance. Real accountability is quiet, steady, specific, and consistent over time. What you often see instead is image repair, wearing the clothes of humility. It is a tactical move. If arguing makes them look worse, they stop arguing and try to become the tragic figure in the story. Suddenly, the focus shifts. Instead of attention staying on the harm they caused, attention moves toward their pain, their struggle, their journey, their brave effort to become better. It is a clever emotional redirect, and it works on people who are moved by vulnerability without checking whether that vulnerability comes with truth, repair, and changed behavior. So if you witness this phase, stay grounded. A public confession is not the same as transformation. Emotional language is not evidence of character. Tears are not proof. Announcements are not accountability. Sometimes the final costume is the wounded soul, but a costume is still a costume, even when it looks softer than the last one. This matters because once they step into that role, anyone who still speaks honestly about the damage may be painted as bitter, cruel, or unable to forgive. That is the final twist. They use apparent openness to take away everyone else's ability to name what happened. If they say it first, loudly enough, and frame it as a redemption arc, then any future truth can be dismissed as punishment. Suddenly, the conversation is no longer about what they did. It becomes about whether others will let them heal. This is why survivors need strong inner clarity. You do not need public approval to know what you lived through. You do not need their confession to validate your experience. You do not need the audience to agree in order for the truth to remain true. And this is where your real win becomes undeniable. Not because they came back and admitted everything, not because everyone apologized to you, not because justice arrived in one neat dramatic scene. You win when the hooks stop working. You win when your mind is no longer available for their theater. You win when the silence no longer scares you. You win when their collapse, their move, their image games, their fake healing, or their public performance no longer pull you back into explaining, proving, reacting, or saving. That is the deeper victory. Not control over them, freedom from the need to control the story at all. If this is hitting home, stay with me, because the final piece is the one people need most after the chaos ends. The hardest part for many survivors comes after the noise is gone. Not because the abuser is still there, but because the pattern is still echoing inside the body. You may still replay conversations, still doubt your memory, still wonder if the silence means you imagined everything. That is why it is so important to understand this. The absence of contact does not erase the reality of what happened. In fact, long silence after strong boundaries often confirms that the connection was built on access, not love. When access ends, so does the performance. That can hurt. It can also heal. Because once you stop waiting for the final showdown, you stop handing your piece to a future moment that may never come. You stop hoping for a confession that would only satisfy you for one day and start building a life that satisfies you every day. You stop scanning the horizon for their return and start noticing your own return, your sleep, your calm, your taste in music, your laughter, your time, your nervous system slowly learning that not every quiet room is dangerous. This is the part no one glamorizes, but it is the part that saves you. The slow rebuilding, the ordinary peace, the boring safety that once felt impossible. And yes, it can feel unfamiliar at first, but unfamiliar does not mean wrong. Sometimes it simply means healthy. Sometimes it means the war is over, even if your body has not caught up yet. So if you are in that strange season right now, where the chaos stopped but your heart still races, do not mistake your fear for a sign that you made the wrong move. Do not confuse silence with weakness. Do not confuse their disappearance with peace on their side. What looks like nothing can be the loudest proof of all. They stopped because they could no longer enter. They backed away because the old map no longer led to your mind. They went quiet because every tool in the box failed against your clarity, your distance, and your refusal to feed the cycle. And whether their collapse stays hidden or becomes visible to the world, your job stays the same. Keep your peace. Keep your boundaries. Keep your energy where it belongs. Let them rewrite stories for strangers if they need to. Let enablers learn the hard way. Let fake redemption performances come and go. You do not need to attend the show anymore. The strongest ending is often the one with no final speech, no revenge scene, no dramatic closing line. Just a life that becomes so solid, so calm, and so fully yours that they cannot find a door back in. That is the real defeat. That is the silence that matters. And if you have reached that place, even a little, then you are not losing. You are leaving the battlefield for good. And that kind of victory does not make a lot of noise. It just changes everything.